Hi there, this is Solitary Run from Solitary Run Films, and welcome to another episode of One Director, Four Films. Today's director is Michael Mann, one of the most influential American directors post 1970, even though he perhaps doesn't get the credit he actually deserves, because let's be honest, Christopher Nolan's pretty much ripped off his look of his films. Amongst others. So again, four films. The fundamental film that sums up Michael Mann's obsessions and themes. Favourite film. An underrated gem. And the Flounder, the film that doesn't quite land with you personally. Again, this series is all about the viewers and your comments. So for the fundamental Michael Mann film, I'm actually going to go with his theatrical debut, Thief, in 1981 with James Caan, who we lost fairly recently. This, along with The Gambler, probably James Caan's finest performances. And this is a film that sums up Michael Mann pretty well as far as the authenticity, the research that he puts into his films. You know, there's real cops, there's real thieves in this film. The equipment they used was actually equipment from one of the thieves in the film. Again, that authenticity, James Caan learned how to open safes and learned how, because Michael Mann demands that kind of level of detail and authenticity. That's why it takes so long to make films. Michael Mann, the architecture of shots is a common Michael Mann theme. The use of location, in Heat he showed LA almost a different side of LA that doesn't really get shown that much, like East LA and the murals and things like that. In Thief, there's a real claustrophobic feeling. This is a character who was in prison for a chunk of his life and doesn't want to go back. But the way the fire escapes, the way Mann shoots the streets, even the sky is kind of like a ceiling on the characters. Again, it's about individuality, it's about rules within a system. The same way in Thief and Last of the Mohicans and rather a lot of his other films, there's a set of rules that have to be followed by the protagonist. And usually the drama within the film comes when the character has to break those rules or question those rules, and it usually ends up badly because there's always a price to be paid. Early performance of Dennis Farina, who was a Chicago cop before he became an actor, who obviously would become a Michael Mann mainstay. James Belushi's arguably his best performance, Robert Prosky, who generally plays kind of cuddly characters, does definitely not play a cuddly character in this. The use of music, the way it's shot, Thief, I think, is the fundamental Michael Mann film. My favourite Michael Mann film, obviously I do love a lot of his films because he's one of my favourite directors, but my favourite film has always been and will always be Manhunter, the definitive Hannibal Lecter film, even though in this version he's only in about 3 scenes. obviously Brian Cox is the definitive Hannibal Lecter. This is one of those films I saw on VHS first and was absolutely blown away with it. Again, the look, the artistic choices made by Mann, having the hospital / prison that Lecter's in, actually making that or shooting it in a museum of art with white antiseptic walls, which is the complete opposite of Hannibal Lecter. Again, far superior to Silence of the Lambs, but I'm not going to go on about bashing Silence of the Lambs because it's too easy, because Manhunter's superior in every way. William Peterson's best performance, Tom Noonan being really scary and threatening. This again, it's one of these films that has different cuts. For me, the best version is a European video cut. This has the theatrical version and the director's cut. The director's cut is better than the theatrical because there's some conversations that are cut, but the director's cut adds 2 scenes that don't actually really add to the film that weren't in the European VHS cut. If you can find the European VHS cut, I think that is the superior version. But this is still wonderful. Kim Greist, who was big in films for a couple of years in the 80s, she did also Brazil. Dennis Farina, Joan Allen, and I believe her first film. Again, the use of music, just the production design, architecture of shots, the way Mann puts objects in the foreground, objects out of focus, really interesting compositions, and it's a really good serial killer film too. It's in the argument for my favourite film of all time. Again, there is probably about 15 films in that argument, but Manhunter is just absolutely wonderful, and it's hard to believe that in 4 years it'll be 40 years old. So for the underrated gem, I was kind of torn between 2 films, but I went for Miami Vice over The Insider, which is also quite excellent. Only Michael Mann can make a 2.5-hour film about the tobacco industry. Absolutely riveting. But I went with Miami Vice because it did get a lot of hate when it came out, because people were expecting a kind of camp 80s looking bright and shiny film. But again, as I talked about in my season 1 review of Miami Vice, the TV show, it's a lot darker and grittier than I think some people remember it. Again, it was one of these films that has really grown on me over the years. Again, when I first saw it, I thought it was good but not great, but then after every subsequent watch it just gets better and better and better. Even though it is just over 2 hours, you wish it was actually longer. Again, not a huge fan of the 2 leads, but they're really good in this. And again, it just looks wonderful, sounds wonderful. Again, the architecture of shots, the use of architecture by Mann is just absolutely wonderful. So I think just because of the reception that this got, I think Miami Vice is the underrated gem, even though The Insider is certainly up there. So for Flounder, there's perhaps a couple of obvious choices. Again, I'm not going to go with The Keep, which is the film that Mann has disowned, which is a shame. There's still a lot of fun to be had with The Keep. I'm not going to go with LA Takedown, his TV movie, which was the precursor for Heat, the dry run for Heat essentially. I'm going to go with Black Hat, which is his last film, which again I haven't watched that often and I haven't watched it for a while. Still a good film, but it's kind of maybe a little bit, it came out maybe about 5 years too late for the subject matter. But again, it still looks good, sounds good, but it's probably the one of his films that I don't revisit that much. Along with LA Takedown, but again, that to me isn't really a Michael Mann film. It's like a dress rehearsal. But Black Hat, not a great Michael Mann film, but still solid. But I think that is the one that is kind of sticks out a little bit in his filmography. So that's my choices for the One Director 4 films for Michael Mann. But again, I really want to see your choices. So thanks very much for watching. Again, a fundamental, a favourite, an underrated gem, and a flounder. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solid Ronan from Solid Ronan Films, saying farewell.